In the previous video, video 3 of week 4, we looked at two similar companies with only one difference in the way they finance themselves. A and B, and you remember that we found that B had a return on equity higher than its after-tax return cap employed, while A had an ROE equal to its return cap employed. We explain it by the leverage effect, and we derive the formula of this leverage effect. Now, in the video 4 of week 4, somebody tells us, I'd like a higher return than 20%. No problem. I increase the debt proportion to 75% and only 25% of equity. It is a company C. And I generate an ROE of 36%. Remember the formula? How do I get the 36%? ROE is equal to ROCE 12% plus 12 minus 4%, the difference between ROCE and the after-tax cost of debt, multiplied by G over E, which now is 75 divided by 25. And when you do calculation, you find 36%. And now, somebody wants more than 36%. No problem. I increase the debt to 90% and only 10% of equity. Look at the result. The ROE jumps to 84%. And then a crazy, greedy guy says, I want more. No problem. I increase the debt proportion to 99%, and now the ROE reaches an astonishing 804%. Everybody is happy. By increasing the amount of debt used by the company compared to its level of equity, I have reached unbelievable returns. But let's be serious. Let's come back to earth, to realism. All that is purely artificial. First, I've assumed that all lenders are ready to follow me in my crazy behavior and lending me money very, very, very much. We all know it doesn't happen like that. Secondly, I've assumed that not only these lenders are always ready to lend me more and more, but they do it at the same interest rate, 6% in the example, and other stupid assumptions. And even if it was possible, look at how vulnerable the company becomes when increasing its debt level. Let's assume that a tough crisis happens, that the economy is in recession, and that the operating profit of the company becomes 0. So ROCE falls to 0%. What about ROE? What about the return on equity? For company B, as you see, it becomes minus 6%. For company C, it becomes minus 18%. Remember the calculation again. ROE is equal to ROCE plus ROC minus I multiplied by G over E. For C, ROE is 0% plus 0% minus 6% multiplied by 75 over 25, which is minus 18%. Just a point. Now you see I use 6% as a cost of debt and no more 4%. Why? I made a mistake? No, because if the company is not making any profit, you don't enjoy any deduction of taxes because of interest. Interests are tax deductible as long as you are making a profit. People say that interests are a tax shield, and a shield is only protecting you when you have something to protect. And if you are not making any profit, you don't have any reduction of your interest rate. So it is 6%. For company D, ROE is minus 54%. The company lost in just 1 year half of its equity. And look at company E. ROE is minus 594%. This is a disaster. This is a bloodbath. The company lost 6 times its equity in 1 year. I mean, the company will be bankrupt before you have time to start writing the balance sheet. In all cases, the boomerang effect is dramatic and shows the increasing risk and vulnerability provided by the increased leverage. So what is the interest of this exercise? What is the value of understanding the difference between ROC and ROE, which is what the leverage effect is all about? It has a strong pedagogical and learning effect of understanding the role of operations and finance in the performance of a firm. We'll see that by analyzing 4 groups. Let's look at Group 1. Group 1 has an ROE which is increasing. Shareholders should be happy. But look at the ROCE. The ROCE is significantly going down. So Group 1 is doing badly, but maintains artificially some illusion by a financial trick. More debt, more leverage. A little bit like this old man or this old lady who hides some bad wrinkles by using some powder, some cream, some makeup, or other artificial product to fool their friends. Adding debt to debt when operations are not doing well just makes the group more vulnerable and risky. If you just look at ROE, you are satisfied with the performance of Group 1. In fact, you should not. Look at both ROCE and ROE anytime. What about Group 2? Group 2 shows a very stable ROE. This is very satisfactory. ROC is stable too and equal to ROE. So as we have seen previously, no debt. Everything is coming from operation. Not only the company is very safe, but it has a great flexibility for the future. If the need shows up, the company will be able to use some of its debt potential to face some temporary problems or to seize some valuable opportunities. What about Group 3? ROE is slightly going down, 15% to 13%. Not a dramatic decrease, but some concerns, some questions. Is there a problem? And if yes, of what nature? Look at ROCE. We notice a small increase of ROCE from 20% to 21% and a level higher than ROE. What's going on? 2 possible explanations in theory. The first one, a negative leverage. The company is borrowing at a rate higher than its ROCE, that is borrowing at something like 25%. Or the company has a negative net financial debt, that is more cash than debt. If the group is sitting on a big amount of cash, what kind of return does it get on that investment, on that cash? Probably something very low, 0.5% to 1%. Obviously, much less than the return on capital employed. So part of the equity of the Group 3 is invested in the business at 20%, and another part is invested at 0.5% to 1%. The result is that the ROE is going down. This is a strong signal for the shareholders who should push the management of the company either to find good investment opportunities to use this cash in the business or to give it back to them through special dividends or share buyback. In the case of Group 3, we can, I think, eliminate the first explanation because you don't borrow in most countries today at 25%, at least in most developed countries. And therefore, we should rely on the second explanation, no debt and a surplus of cash. Again, another good example showing the need to look at both ROCE and ROE. Finally, Group 4. ROE is extremely stable and extremely high at 40%. Why? ROC is good and stable at 14%. And Group 4 is massively playing on debt. Maybe a typical LBO, as we call it, leverage buyout, buying a company with a lot of debt, a lot of leverage. In fact, 1/3 of the performance of this company are explained by the operations, and 2/3 are coming from finance, the leverage. Great, but risky. Group 4 is very vulnerable. Try to imagine the impact of an economic downturn to Group 4, as we have illustrated earlier in this video. Again and again, the same strong and essential conclusions. First, always looked at the relations between operation and finance. Where is the performance coming from? Operations or finance, or both, and in which mix, in which quantity? Second, the risk-return trade-off. If I want a high return, I have to take risk. If I want to take low risk, I have to accept a lower return. No way out of that. And 3, flexibility. Keep flexibility for the future. We understand now the concepts and measures of profitability. Economic profitability, ROCE, ROCE, and financial profitability, ROE, return on equity. The final point is now to understand the relationship between profitability and growth. And this is the concept of self-sustainable growth, SSG, which we will cover in the next video, the video 5 of week 4. See you in a bit.